So today I want to talk a little bit about sex and sexuality. If you're somebody who grew up knowing from day dot that you were straight, more power to you. You heard the narratives that society was saying that boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they fall in love and they trek off together into some dark, secluded corner of a parking lot and make babies. If you heard that story and it made sense to you, congratulations. This video is probably not for you. Me, like a large percentage of other people, heard that story and felt like, not sure where I fit in that dynamic. Because, like possibly you, I wasn't 100% heteronormative. I wasn't perfectly straight, I wasn't perfectly gender conforming, and that led to a lot of soul searching, trial and error, and a long process of coming out of confusion regarding my sexuality and gender identity. So people are totally straight, awesome, kudos to them. They don't have to go through the process that we queer or gender nonconforming or sexually atypical people have to go through. Because for us to come to know ourselves and fully accept ourselves and live our identity is very much a journey of the soul, a journey of coming to really understand our depths. Because society doesn't tell a narrative that easily fits around us. We don't get a perfect example and say, oh yes, that's me to a T. I see it in my parents, I see it in my siblings, I see it on television and movies, and yes, representation is so much better and so many more people are more out and vocal about their orientations and their identity labels than they ever have before. But because there is so much nuance in sexuality and gender diversity, it can be very hard to come to terms with what we think we are, and then because we are constantly evolving and constantly changing, those labels may need to shift and grow as we better come to understand ourselves. So let's start by talking about sexuality. Most people think of sexuality existing on a spectrum thanks to Alfred Kinsey. He did research and came up with this idea of there being a 6-point scale leading from fully opposite sex attracted to fully same-sex attracted. This got a lot of pushback in the 80s and 90s, and people said, no, there's no such thing as bisexuality. A bisexual male is just a gay man who hasn't fully come to terms with his orientation. In more recent times, we've become much more accepting of the notion of sexual attraction being very fluid and nuanced and not just being one or the other. In modern parlance, we have a lot of vocabulary to describe somebody's sexuality. Same-sex attracted, or traditionally described as homosexual, a term that isn't so much in use nowadays, typically gay, we would say. Opposite sex attracted, which would be heterosexual or more typically straight. Bisexual, meaning attracted to either gender. Then it gets a little bit more nuanced. There's other vocabulary that has come into vogue in the last decade. Pansexual, meaning I don't really see gender, I see people. I could be attracted to anyone on the gender or sex spectrums. Omnisexual, I see gender, but I am attracted to different genders in different ways. Demisexual, I'm actually not sexually attracted unless I feel a strong emotional component with somebody, whether that be opposite or same sex or gender fluid. Asexual, not attracted to any gender. Sapiosexual, not attracted to gender so much as I'm attracted to intellect. And these are just a few. There are many more labels, and as we come to understand and explore and discover ourselves, we may find that we identify with one label at one point and another label at another point, and that people and communities and experiences change our sexuality understanding. Now you'll notice in this breakdown of sexuality, there's a lot of talk about gender. Gender is something that we use a shorthand for in modern communication, but actually it's rather nuanced. So when people talk about there being men and women, they're usually talking about somebody who presents as male and somebody who presents as female, that they're walking down the street and you say, oh, that's a man. Well, kinda. This gets a little bit heady, but I'm gonna try and break it down for you a little bit. There are actually 3 different spectrums. You have sex, so that's physical body, chromosomes, penises, vaginas. You have gender expression, which is presenting as being more masculine or more feminine. And then you also have gender identity. How does somebody see themselves as more female or more male? Now, why I say there's a lot of nuance and gradation here, and the point of this video isn't necessarily to give you a deep understanding about gender and gender expression, but I think it is important because if someone says, oh, I'm attracted to men, well, what does that really mean? Are you attracted to people who have penises? Are you attracted to people who present as male? Are you attracted to people who identify as male? Because what about somebody that has a male body but identifies as female and presents as gender fluid, is that somebody who you would then consider being attracted to? And maybe this is getting too heady, but I think it's important to break down, because when we just use the shorthand of men and women, while it is a good shorthand and it is valuable and it's a great way to communicate, we should be aware that there is more nuance there. So let me walk you through these three spectrums just a little bit. So starting with sex, biological sex. Male, female, man, woman may seem straightforward, but that doesn't take into account somebody who might be intersex, meaning that they were born with non-typical genital expression, that they don't have just a penis or just a vagina or just testes or just ovaries, but they have a more unique expression. This doesn't take into account people who have non-typical chromosome expression, that they might have XXY chromosomes. XY is typically ascribed to male, XX is traditionally ascribed to female, but there are likely people numbering in the millions who have some other sort of genetic expression like XXY, XXX, XYY that maybe don't even know it. Sex isn't as straightforward as we think. What we typically ascribe as being male or female has to do with what we call gender expression and gender identity. Because what if we have, let's say, a trans man, someone who was born biologically female, came to identify as being male, but is decided that they do not want to have genital reassignment surgery. So they act like a man, they use he, him pronouns, they dress like a man, they present as male, they identify as male, but biologically they're female. Does that make them less of a man? How about somebody who has a female body, but identifies as gender fluid and presents as masculine? How would we describe them? Gender identity is how you see yourself in the world. Gender expression is how you present, how you want others to see you presenting gender-wise. In heteronormative culture, and again, if you were born totally 100% heteronormative and never had to think about this shit, good for you. Life was a little bit simpler and more straightforward. But for people who are queer or non-heteronormative, it becomes an interesting rainbow of things to explore. So what is it to say, I have a male body, I'm attracted to people who present as men, but I'm okay with there being some sexual difference. Like, I'm totally okay dating a trans man who has a vagina, but identifies as male, right? Like, there's a whole bunch of ambiguity that goes in there. And again, this is a very rough and ruddy explanation of gender and sex. There are, I'm sure, hundreds of fabulous videos that break down sex and gender in a more nuanced and articulate way, and I am by no means an expert. But I think it's an important thing to consider, because if we start to view sex, gender expression, gender identity, sexuality as being spectrums, it opens a lot of doors of who we might or may not be attracted to. Like, what happens if you met somebody at a bar, thought they were awesome, so attracted to them, so turned on, and you went home and you realized the gender they present as and the gender they identify as is not in alignment with their sexual expression? Would you turn them away even though you're turned on by them? These are questions worth considering. And this is the reason for myself, I've kind of moved away from using the label gay, even though I'm, very predominantly same-sex attracted, just because I've had instances where I've been attracted to people who weren't male, gendered, masculine presenting with a man's body. I have been attracted to trans individuals, gender fluid individuals, female individuals. And this is also why people like J.K. Rowling have been getting a lot of flack nowadays, because just simply saying, oh, protect women! Well, what does it mean to be a woman exactly? Like, yeah, of course. I'm personally a big feminist. I'm a big believer in rights for women, solidarity for women, the importance of finding your tribe. That often has to do with people who match your gender expression. But are you saying that somebody who believes themselves to be female, presents as female, is somehow less than? That they're less worthy in some way? Because I think that's where the real issue is. You're saying that somebody who is born with a body that matches their gender identity is more worthy than somebody who exists in a different way. Part of the reason I'm having you go through all this breaking down of ideas about what is gender and what is sex is because when we have everything so rigidly labeled in our mind that I am only attracted to women, I am only attracted to men, then it becomes very hard for ourselves to accept when something about us and our own identity or who we're attracted to doesn't fit within those parameters. If we can start to see gender and sex and sexuality as existing on this beautiful spectrum, this beautiful matrices of different possibilities, and we say, hey, I'm usually attracted to women or bodies that are feminine or present as being female, then it leaves a little wiggle room. When you meet that stud in the bathroom of the gym and you're feeling a little turned on, it starts to give you a little bit of wiggle room to think, hey, maybe my identity isn't as rigidly fixed as I thought it was. Just by the sheer fact that you're watching this video, you're probably questioning your sexuality a little bit. And that's okay, because you should. People are not as clear-cut and heteronormative as society, or at least older society, would like us to believe. According to Gallup, 5% of the world's population is LGBTQIA+. That they fall somewhere in one of the rainbows of these different spectrums. 5% according to Gallup. But also according to Gallup, people estimate, based on their friends and family and conversations they've had with one another, that approximately 25% of the population is part of the queer community. Well, isn't that interesting? So, self-reported, what do you identify as? People identify as blank. 5% say that they're somewhere on the rainbow spectrum. Versus when you talk to friends and family, they estimate 25%. So what does this tell us? It suggests that people know things about their friends and family, and those friends and family members are not self-reporting their gender or sexuality non-heteronormativity. That they are actually queer, but not admitting it. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think, oh, perhaps people are just overestimating how many queer individuals there are in the world, let's turn to a recent poll by YouGov. Done in 2020, YouGov found that of millennials and Generation Z, or we should say people who grew up in a more relaxed culture regarding sexual identity, a whopping 48% said that they were not strictly heterosexual. Let's just review that for a second. Nearly half of Generation Z and millennials say that they're not entirely straight. And that's not even counting conversation on gender, that's just purely sexuality. Now you might say, hey, they're young, they're still exploring, they'll probably settle down. You're right, they might end up in a traditionally heterosexual relationship. But I would also argue too, 48% says they're already aware of their feelings, that they're aware of not being exactly a 0 on the Kinsey scale. How many others are there that have feelings, have longings, that they haven't yet admitted to themselves? I would say that there's a fair amount. Because I gotta tell you, as a queer man, I have had countless conversations with other men who identify as straight about secret longings, buried desires, activities that they pursued with other men in showers or steam rooms or in the woods, on vacation, in a back alley. I've often heard that if you go to a gay bathhouse in Europe at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, the entirety of the clientele are straight. There are so many stories of long-held angst and suffering around sexuality because their family, the culture they grew up in, or their society said it wasn't okay to be something other than purely heteronormative. And if that's what you're meant to be, yay for you. If you truly are 100% straight, awesome. But chances are good that you're not. Now, a lot of straight people say, why do you gotta talk about it all the time? I don't go around talking about it all the time. Why do you always have to talk about who you're screwing? Well, A, yeah, you do. Notice the hypersexualization in movies, TV shows, advertisements. Heterosexual sex is everywhere. And B, we need to talk about it because that's how we're going to heal. So long as we deem part of ourselves as shameful, bad, ugly, dangerous, and we try to shove it in a box, shove it under the stairs, put it in a closet, chop it off, that's not who I am, we'll never be whole. We'll never be happy. If you try to deny a huge section of what makes you you, you'll never dwell in wholeness. Because coming to love and accept your sexuality is one of the keys to living a full, happy, and healthy life. When you're able to really own and work through the buried shame around who you love, who you're attracted to, who you want to partner with, and you can accept all parts of yourself, and you do the gritty, heartbreaking, soul-altering work of coming to truly love yourself and believe that you are perfect and beautiful and wonderful regardless of who you love, that's when you're going to be okay. That's when you're going to find wholeness. So if you want to love yourself, you got to admit the fact that you're probably not 100% heterosexual. But wouldn't it be so much more fascinating to say, hey, whatever I feel, whatever I express, whatever I need, I'm good, I'm beautiful, I'm healthy, I'm whole, I'm radiant. I am exactly as and where I should be. Whether you love a man, a woman, a gender non-conforming person, a gender fluid person, whomever, whatever, however you love, let it be perfect, let it be sacred. ironically, the conservative community is typically pro-family values. And there is a good reason for having pro-marriage, pro-family stances, because it creates greater stability in society. It creates less reliance on government support. When one person loses their job, they have a spouse to take care of them. Being pro-family means that you're wanting to create tribes, you're wanting to create communities. There's less movement, things root down, it creates more stability. You would think, given these things, that a conservative viewpoint would say that, hey, let's welcome non-traditional sexuality and gender expression. If somebody wants to get married and settle down and start a family and it's 2 women or 2 men or 2 gender non-conforming people, more power to them. They're creating stability, they're creating family values. Woo! You would think that would be the conservative viewpoint, wouldn't you? Wouldn't that be nice? I just want to say this, wherever you are on your journey to loving and accepting your orientation, your sexual identity, all of that, wherever you are is perfect. Wherever you are is beautiful. It's going to continue to evolve and change over time. So let it be whatever it is. Let it be okay to be you, because it's beautiful. So let's do a short meditation together on accepting our identity, however we find ourselves. So take a deep breath. As you let it go, just feel your shoulders relax, your chest broaden. Take your hands and place them palm on back of palm over your heart. As you breathe into the middle of your chest, feel a sense of love well up. A sense of gratitude for being wherever you are, for being however you were made. You are beautiful. You are radiant. You are perfect. Feel gratitude well up in the space behind your hands. Feel it fill you. Feel yourself expressing ecstatic joy. Let your palms open skyward and offer that gratitude up towards the heavens. Even if it's hard to feel genuine in doing this, offer gratitude up and thank the universe for being however you are. Thank yourself for all of your bits. Everything that makes you, you. In your beautiful cacophony of conflicting ideas and longings and identities. Thank life for your journey, as challenging as it may have been. Thank you for the events that have made you who you are. From the yogic perspective, we have lived many lifetimes. We have been every race, every gender, every orientation. And that life chooses to go through all these permutations in a search for self, in a search for belonging, a search for understanding the entirety of life. And so however you identify today, it's beautiful. It's part of why you're here, why you incarnated. Whoever you'll be tomorrow, that's part of your lesson too. So be joyful in the experience of you. Know that you are worthy of love, worthy of belonging, worthy of acceptance. You are whole, you are unique, you are perfect exactly as you are meant to be. And don't let anyone ever tell you different. Let go of the haters who said you should be something else. Let go of those individuals who are afraid of their own sexual, gender, sexuality, non-conformity. They'll get the lessons they need when they need it. Feel yourself radiating like the sun. Don't let anyone ever make you think you were wrongly made, because you are perfect. In whatever way you find yourself, you are perfect. Thank you for your time today. I'm Kay, this is Ecstatic Self. I've got my book coming out next week, Journey to the Ecstatic Self. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, wherever books are sold. Thank you for joining me today. It is a sincere pleasure to get to be here with you. If you like this, please share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it. Hit the subscribe button and then the notifications next to it. And I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Namaste.